England was once made up of small and secret places. We are the most private country in the world, and perhaps the most privately proud. In Yorkshire, that high seat of the English virtues, lies one of these small and private places which have lived out most of the important things that have happened to England, which are more than the crowning of kings or the execution of traitors or the proper victories over the French. It is called Lothersdale. It is proud and plain and reasonably virtuous. It is an epitome of that England which the English would love everywhere to be true. In a long valley folded into the Pennines, there is a meeting of waters. This is where Lothersdale began, so long ago that the men who settled here had not begun to call themselves Englishmen. A man in a motor car might hurry in a splash of rain through this place and notice nothing. Nothing except the quiet decency of the north. It is built, for the most part, of well-squared stones that would crack a cannonball. It is as clean and neat as a front parlour. It contains all that a village needs: one church, one chapel, one shop, one pub. It has no squire, but it has a people's pride, enough to serve an imperial city. It has 300 inhabitants and only 6 new houses since the First World War. It is as importantly English as any great and many-steepled city, with a guild hall and a safe full of municipal plate. It is northern, or it is nothing. And enclosed by the solid grace of this little yard stands the living cliché of the north, the mill. Its work is intimately woven into the community. Work is not here a matter for ritual antagonism. It is a matter of craft and a matter of pride.
You get more of a kick out of life, I think. You work 3/4 of your life, so you might as well do a job you like doing. I don't like this.
Well, I got told the wagon driving and I was, you know, thinking about other jobs. And I got persuaded by Ronnie. He said, come and give it a try. And I found I like it. It's a lot easier. And it's better money, believe it or not. There's a lot more to it than you think. I mean, you know, I've been around the mill all my life, and yet I didn't realise half of it until I came to work here.
We're all friendly, aren't we? Everybody knows one another, that sort of thing. I mean, we've been brought up with most of the people that work here. And like Ronnie's more my age, and we've all been brought up together sort of thing, haven't we?
Yeah. You're not a number.
You're not a number, no.
So, I mean, you get the big factories and you're a number on a payslip. Here, I mean, you talk to the managing director, Alec. He's on it. He's not, you know, he's not remote.
He's sort of one of us, you know. I mean, we don't think...
If you've got a problem, you go see him. You don't go see somebody who sees somebody who sees somebody. You just go to him. And you know you can go to him.
It's the sort of thing that he expects and that he wants.
Yeah. Same the other way around. If if you're not doing your job right, he'll come and tell you.
He won't send somebody else. He'll say, he'll come himself.
No, it's direct contact. You're not,
You must work to your own pace as well, don't you?
He's not pushy, he's not, no.
No, he doesn't push you in general. I mean, the quality of the stuff does that itself. And you can't rush cloth like that.
Wilsons have been here for 150 years.
This is my great-great-grandfather, who came down from Scotland in 1815 with a pack on his back and a golden guinea in his pocket, and found here in Lothersdale a small spinning firm, and fell in love with the daughter of the spinner and married her in 1820. My son is at business school, and we're very sure that he's going to come in the mill and carry on the tradition as the 6th generation sat in this chair. Here is the very same guinea which my great-great-grandfather brought down from Scotland. And this is the sovereign which he promised his father he would add to it if he ever made his fortune in the world.
The mill stream has slaved for Lothersdale for centuries. It ground the corn for bread. Its power spanned the thread for cottage weavers. It drove looms for the Industrial Revolution. Only in the 30s, when the electricity came striding over the hills, only then the mill's vast water wheel was stopped. The mill is old and yet keeps its pace beside the times. It fashions the stuff of modern luxury with fibres made by man. On this June morning, on the edge of the moor, John Pickles has 60 sheep to clip. Men were farming in Lothersdale long before Duke William of Normandy took stock of his English conquest.
He sent men all over England and caused them to write down how much land belonged to the archbishops, abbots and earls, and what every inhabitant in all England possessed in land or in cattle, and how much money it was worth. There was not a single rood of land, nor an ox, nor a cow, nor a pig passed by that was not set down in the accounts. And then all these writings were brought to him.
And here is his Domesday Book, which was an instrument of government almost as effective as the sword and the gallows. Here is the record undimmed after almost 1,000 years. Lothersdale, you can read in the old spelling, had 10 measures of taxable, cultivated land belonging to a Saxon called Gammel. John Pickles shears his sheep in a way the Saxon Gammel would have known. Neither Gammel nor his Norman masters would understand how the land today, out of its very abundance, can create problems for those who make their living off it.
Wait! 32, 11, 10, 10, 10, 20, 30, 10, 5, 30, 10, 30, 10, 30, 10, 40, 50, 10, 50, 10, 50, you're out.
Monday's market day at Skipton, 5 miles away. But it is Black Monday here these days for Pennine farmers. At Dowshay Farm, on the edge of the village, Edward Booth gathers in the grass for winter feed. It will be a long, hard winter, financially at least.
They told us we were going to be short of beef, you see. Only 2 years since. And, well, there's no shortage. There's too much cattle in the country. And every farmer was very confident. They gave high prices for calves, and they aren't worth a penny more today than what they were 12 months since. Because prices have come down that fast.
All out in front, away it goes.
This government, they insist on cheap food and that's it. We're having to suffer. It isn't affecting us a lot because we concentrate mostly on milk cows, you see. Well, we've a regular income off them, you know, every month. But a man that rears livestock, it's hit him hard. There was one farmer, he had a new calved heifer there, 3 years old, and it made 108 pounds. Well, he gave 165 pounds for that same cow 10 months ago. It's as drastic as that. A man with 20 cows today, well, it must be a struggle, you know. I think he'd nearly be better going out to work for a job. He'd be better off financially, but if a man's been brought up with farming, well, he'll put up with little, you know, little wage, you know, to have his own way of life and such like. That's why they stick it.
At the fold, in the oldest part of Lothersdale, the Teals have farmed for generations. Now Alfred Teal, near the end of his working life, has had to make new and hard decisions.
Our buildings are very much out of date now. Very, very much. We'd have to spend, I don't know, between 15 and 20,000, maybe more, I don't know, to bring all the buildings up to date with modern milking techniques. And so I was very interested during the winter to go on to this new beef scheme of the government. It's a very chancy business. It's a bit worrying, but the farms are my own now. I've no mortgage, no rent to pay, and I think I can perhaps manage to have it a bit easier in the last few years. I can still turn back if things get too desperate. But I'm looking forward to going on to beef and being able to go out at night and stay out late, and stay in bed a bit longer in the morning.
Lothersdale does not proclaim its presence, but history has sought it out time and again. 300 years ago, this valley gave some shelter to godly men who sought a quiet place. They were called Quakers. Their meeting houses were folded away, like this one at Skipton. They were and are a people who believe that God spoke to them directly. They would sit in their halls in silence, not praying, but waiting for a prayer. And yet, to the law of the land, these gentle people were subversives. In court, they would not take off their hats to authority, nor take the oath in the name of God. Their offence was a refusal to pay the tithes, which the Church of England, by law established, demanded from every countryman. Church and state persecuted them, and they learnt gentleness from being persecuted. So many went to jail, and some died of it. 8 who were imprisoned are still remembered by Quakers as the Lothersdale martyrs. The village was then part of the nearby parish of Carlton. It had one vicar, George Markham, who for years harried the Lothersdale Quakers, and did it without mercy. One of the prisoners recorded an appeal to this vicar in his prison journal.
George Markham, I wish I could call thee my friend, but I think thou hast not used me in a friendly way. If 1 shilling or 1 penny would free me from prison, I durst not pay it, for fear it would bring a wound upon my conscience, never to be repaired in this world nor in the world to come. I am now confined here, far distant from my dear wife, who dwelleth like a mournful dove that has lost her mate, and 5 small children who are fatherless. And thou art the cause of all this. It brings to my mind the words of Scripture, they covet fields and take them away. They oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage.
For more than 2 centuries, the Quakers lived in Lothersdale. This was their meeting house. It is a private house now, but their dead lie within this ground. They seem to have left a strong and good influence here, as a local historian, mill owner Kenneth Wilson, is sure of it.
The Quakers, who came in the early 17th century here, with their very strict rules of behavior, far too strict for modern times. I'm sure that they set a standard of conduct in Lothersdale which has been kept up ever since. And though in those days it was very strict to be a Quaker, yet Lothersdale since then, I'm sure, has been one of the happiest places.
This is a landscape pricked not with spires, but with mill chimneys that point the way to profit rather than to God. In this part of the world, God's houses, like his people, have their feet on the ground. They are plain and foursquare as the people who seek his mercy within them. Few Christians, except those facing lions, have ever been more serious. In Lothersdale, their numbers dwindle. The body of their chapel is a social centre, and they use an upper room for worship. This is a religion, a great version of the many pursuits of the pursuing God, in which joy and guilt are mixed. The result has been for all of us a new sort of social responsibility. It started in the womb of Anglicanism, but the followers of John Wesley came to regard their own authority as sovereign. It became genuinely democratic, independent, radical. It came to serve that class that the Anglicans had failed, the artisans. It does go with chimneys rather than steeples. It was in places like this that the foundations of the labour movement were laid. Compassion, indignation, morality, the lot. This place was a place for the fear of God and the rights of man. These people changed the Anglican Church and the basic political character of England. In the process, they probably saved their own souls. Here there is an acceptance of death, with which Lothersdale is well acquainted. The chapel dead yield their ground to the living, and the place is alive.
No, you're not having any more.
All fall down, Mike.
Do you know she's just eaten a mouthful of plain?
Now they're just miles on there.
That's it.
Oh, we're sorry we got your old mistake.
I'm sorry, it was right.
Chapel and meeting house. Nothing starts from nothing. The unreformed religion was here first. Out on the moor, the Ordnance Survey still marks a holy well. Here, the first Christians were baptized in spring water in a place dedicated to the Mother of God. Lothersdale still calls this relic the Old Cross, though it is only the socket for the old symbol. But Yorkshire is rich in relics. It is strewn with the ruins of monasteries. They died of the banishment of the old religion, and yet, like the socket of the Old Cross, they still proclaim a continuity over the centuries. Christ Church in Lothersdale is Victorian. Its rector is not. Dr. Bennett teaches languages 3 days a week at Bradford Grammar School. This place was once sharply divided between church and chapel. That rift has closed. The Anglican rector plays the organ when needed in the Bethel and helps them out with their preaching. Here in Lothersdale, the gentle idleness of the old clerical establishment is gone. The church stands on the edge of the village, an easy walk from the house of the man who built it, John Sidgwick of Stone Gap. That was in 1838. The following year, Mrs. Sidgwick engaged a new governess called Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte hated it here and later used it as a model for Gateshead Hall, where Jane Eyre was so unhappy. She wrote to her sister Emily,
I have striven hard to be pleased with my new situation. The country, the house, and the grounds are, as I have said, divine. But alack a day, there is such a thing as seeing all beautiful around you. Pleasant woods, winding white paths, green lands and blue sunshiny sky, and not having a free moment or a free thought left to enjoy them. The children are constantly with me. As for correcting them, I quickly found that was out of the question. They are to do as they like, and complaining to the mother only brings black looks on myself. One of the pleasantest afternoons I have spent here, indeed, the only one at all pleasant, was when Mr. Sidgwick walked out with his children and I had orders to follow a little behind.
Come on now, then.
As he strolled through his fields with his magnificent dog at his side, he looked very like what a frank, wealthy, conservative gentleman ought to be.
Hewitt's, an ancient farm carved out of the high moor below Pinner Beacon. In the afternoon sun, Mrs. Pickles looks out across the valley she has known for more than 90 years.
Oh, I like up here. Yes, I like up here. You can come out, whether you've done your hair or what you've done, you can come out and have a look round. Yeah. My father was born in 1849, across on yon hill, and they were one of 6. And his father worked for a farmer, and he'd 6 shillings a week, and 6 children to keep. Well, my father never had anything, only potatoes and porridge. And when he got to be 9 years old, he hadn't had a suit before, only made of a cotton sacking. He came to mill from there, and it would be 2 miles. And they started at 6, till 6. And just a small wage, about a shilling a week. Never had a day at school, and mother neither. And there were never a better mental arithmetic reckoner than my father. But not with a pen. Well, he could set them down, but not write letters. And my mother couldn't. Not till I got big enough for even write a name. And she just learnt it to just write it. And that was all they could do in them days.
I'm getting close. Pat, pat, pat. Foot.
It were right delicate. When they come from there, you see, they'd been that poor. Well, his sisters, three of them died off before they were 20. And my father was right tall and small, and there were Mr. Lace, lived at Stone Gap. And he'd come down into the village, and his daughters had come, and then they'd pop into anybody's house. And they saw my grandmother and my father was right thin. Oh, he says, I'll send you something down. He says, and make him take it. And it were a bottle of cod liver oil. And then he'd call when he was down at village again, and he'd say, where's that bottle? Is it finished? And if it weren't, he'd say, well, why hadn't it finished? Get it into him.
If you were seeking the essence of Victorian England, you could find it here, among these Lothersdale gravestones. Those children who did survive infancy grew up with death, if not a friend of the family, at least a familiar visitor. Here at the Springs farm, a girl recorded his visits. Her name was Clara Heaton, and like many Victorian young ladies, she kept a diary.
April 6, 1866. I'm 17 today. Lizzie Ann took me 2 new flannel petticoats. John Walter fell down in the mill in a fit and died on Wednesday. Mamma is not very well. The doctor's coming to see her. Papa's gone to a cricket match at Bradford between Yorkshire and Cambridge University. Cousin Harper's baby's dead. And Walter brings word that Mrs. John Wilson of Green Hill is dead. More people have died this year than I ever knew before. Knitting Grandpa a pair of garters for his birthday present. Lizzie Ann and I have been putting laurel wreaths under our pillows at night to dream about our future husbands. July the 19th. Lizzie Ann has died, and I am so lonely. The 3 Graham sisters all died of consumption. Dreamt of Aunt Lund being buried alive. Dr. McNabb got her and took her up our front in a hearse. Went into the mill It is beautiful to see the spinning. Little children that seem to have no sense do it so well. The Queen opened Parliament for the first time since the Prince Consort's death. The papers say she looked very sad. Oh, it is so lonely without Lizzie. I just sit in the kitchen with Papa and Mamma and read. Death will never leave this dale. I wonder who will go next. I am the most miserable creature in the world. I shall be very happy when I get a rich husband. Nobody can help being happy with a lot of brass.
They've always had a proper respect for brass in the north. In Lothersdale, limestone has been a source of it since the 17th century. Today, Raygill Quarry is worked by an international giant on a massive scale. But for a century and a half, the quarry belonged to one family, the Spencers. They lived nearby, here at Raygill House. Like the Wilsons of the mill, these Spencers were pillars of Lothersdale's prosperity. Walter Thornton remembers the old days.
It took a whole day to take 4 loads to Connolly. They'd leave 8 in the morning from Raygill. When I used to be going to school, often the first carts were going down. Then they came back about, well, they'd get back about 11:30 till Raygill. Maybe a load up before dinner and then down again. There's some good men to work them, really good men. They understood the road. They didn't make them go fast on the road. They let them take their time. They were just shouting all the way, "Are we? Gee, back there!" and crack the whips, and then they'd have a hay net hung on the hames, and these who were really good, they were just pulling handfuls of hay out and giving them it to eat as they went downhill. They didn't give them it uphill because they'd have choked, you see, when they were eating, when the collar were tight on the neck. About 1921 or 2, they got the first motor wagon at Raygill, and this driver took a load of stones to Burnley, and he was back directly, and he says, "Whatever to do next?" And the manager there, he hadn't been used to speed like that. He says, "I think they'd better grease it now."
The Spencers were Victorian paternalists, the nearest thing to a squire, perhaps, that Lothersdale has ever had. When the family had a silver wedding, they took all their workers to Blackpool for the day. They went by special train. And there was no stinting at the table. Lothersdale owes much to the Spencers. The last of them, Mary Spencer Hayes, left most of her money in trust funds for the good of all the people here. For instance, in Lothersdale, there's no public transport. The older people would not see much of the world outside without Spencer money to finance the fortnightly expeditions of the Over 60s Club. And it's not only the old who benefit. There is help too for the young people who are just starting out in life as students and apprentices. The welfare state leaves gaps, but Lothersdale has some private means. But there was one thing Lothersdale people always used to be able to provide for themselves, and they didn't have to seek it outside the village, although there is an old story told against them. This is Walter Thornton again.
Come on, donkey. I worked in the mill for a short time at Sutton, and this overlooker went on to tell me, he said, "Oh, in Lothersdale they were backward." He said 80 years or more ago. He said they used to go down to Keighley on Saturday nights just to watch bacon slices for entertainment.
There cannot have been a village in England up to the Second World War that could not lay on its own entertainment, and Lothersdale was no exception. The older generation remembers a life with joy in it.
the church and the chapel were both filled with young people, and the regular entertainments always chosen when there was a moon, so that people could pass the bridges and cross the becks and so on with a moon, never without a moon. We always fixed that up, and we had plays and all sorts of good fun. Really, really happy times.
Because it was always looked upon as a very happy village because we were related in one way or another. The different families had intermarried, and therefore we were in a way all in a family, you see. Well, now often I can go through the village and meet people I've never met before. And when I go into our little shop, into Mr. Hardy's, he can always tell me who they are.
Yes, please, yes. And some sugar.
I think in a small village like this, it's much easier to get to know people. There's one shop, and when you go in, you're introduced to anybody that you don't know. And you feel as though you're part of the place when you've only been here a short time.
The Abbott family moved here from Ilkley 12 weeks ago. Fred Abbott researches at Leeds University. New people in an old house.
Sergil, as it's called, was named after a Norseman called Solar. And whether there was a house here at that time, I'm not quite sure. Certainly the deeds go back to 1500. And the name on the house were two Quakers who lived here. And that was the old part of the house there. The barn at the end also is 17th century. A bit difficult if you've got no floors in and you've got 3 children who want to go to bed.
Settling in is hard labour, though it's a labour of love.
You only have to look down the valley to feel that it's worth doing this. Just to live here, really. Even if you have to travel a long way to work.
The thing is that it takes about 3/4 of an hour each way. But at the end of your 3/4 of an hour, you've got somewhere worth being. I think you can spend quite a lot of time and not end up where you'd really like to be anyway.
Jonathan Abbott, aged 6, was born in Jamaica, but he belongs heart and soul to Yorkshire. At 6 o'clock on the dot every evening, he goes to a neighbouring farm to help. It is his pleasure and self-appointed duty. He is putting down roots with tropical speed. Jonathan goes to the village school, a lively place where work and play go happily hand in hand. The parents of many of these children work outside the village, although farming is still far and away the main occupation. The children will leave when they are 11 to continue their education away from the village. Inevitably, the majority will not return here to work. The traditional pattern of a lifetime lived and worked in one place is changing everywhere.
David.
These children have opportunities their parents never knew. For an earlier generation in Lothersdale, there was no choice.
Going into the mill is sort of
The old traditional type thing, it was either the mill or nothing type of thing.
Yes, well, there was good money in the mill years ago. And children, well, they hadn't the chance. The parents couldn't afford to send them to a better education, so they went in the mill for the good money, you see, years ago. But now, you see, they can get all the education they need if they're bright enough, aren't they? Yes.
And so the mill's still the lowest on the
yes,
list again. You know, oh, can't go to the mill. It's
yes, but really, I think they should be re-educated to think different.
Well, it will come in time as wages improve and things like that. It will come, like it has done in other industries.
But it's not.
I mean, look at coal mining. That's another one. Go down the mine, but look at miners now. Money they can earn.
Yeah, but it's not just the money. I think.
Oh, every
there's
job's
more
money.
Yeah, but not just the money. It's no good, to my mind, doing a job which is all money if you've got no satisfaction out of it.
Oh, no.
I mean, I've had a job, I had good wages down south. When I came here, I had a low wage, but I'll get more satisfaction out of this job than the job I had down south.
Yes, because you've got interested in the job. When you first came in, and when I first came in, I was terrified of this place.
Yes, but you see,
machines
later on, when children get a bit older, they get different values in life. Maybe a sense of pride in your work has a lot to do with it. Not just money, to my mind, anyway.
For some of the children, farming is the natural occupation. Philip Naylor's mother was born at Stone Gap Farm. His father works his own farm single-handed. But small farmers find it hard to survive these days. Edward Booth at Dowshay started out with 40 acres 20 years ago. Now he owns 300. His land was once 6 separate farms.
That's going to be a problem, you know, this amalgamation of farms, you know. But there'll be less farmers. There will, I think, in another 10 years, a lot less than what there is now. You know, it's nearly impossible now for a young man to start on his own like I did. Well, there isn't the same small farms, you know, it's just like me spoil the chances in a way.
And what does the future hold for his own 4 sons?
And 2 eldest are really keen, you know. 3rd lad is as well, I think, you know. He's only 12, but he seems quite keen. I think they'll all make farmers, you see. They don't see anything else. If we lived on the edge of a town, such as Skipton or Colne or any town, they might have a different attitude, you see, but you know, they're brought up with it. As long as the job pays, it brings in a good living. I've kept building up and building up, so there's enough work there for them all when they leave school, you see.
The children of such an English place have always lived under the threat of that interruption of their lives, which is war. This is a memorial to the dead of the 20th century wars, but Lothersdale can still name the names of their own men who drew their bows against the Scots on Flodden Field nearly 5 centuries ago. Smith and Rycroft, Middybrook, Wilkinson and Daughtry. This is Lothersdale's entry in the muster roll of 1539. It is a list of every able-bodied man in England and what he could bring if he was called out against the king's enemies, bill or bow, or horse and harness. Under Clifford of Skipton Castle, Lothersdale men rallied to Henry V and answered the roll call for Agincourt. Their names are entered here. Lothersdale men have done their share of fighting. when Napoleon threatened, Lothersdale men guarded the Pinner Beacon, one of the great chain of watchfires which would have warned the nation of invasion. At least one of them died of the guarding. And on that beacon moor above the village, a more subtle, more terrible watch is still being kept. New roads cut channels through ancient places, and England goes past in a necessary torrent. But once upon a time, pack horses trod out a different route. The Pennine Way runs up the spine of England for 250 miles. It takes Lothersdale in its stride, down one side of the valley, up the other. This is a path as old as England. Here a man can indeed walk until he drops.
Hey. That's enough for me. I think I should move this farm to the bottom.
And here the wayfarer can get rest and refreshment in the old way, from Mrs. Burnup at Woodhead Farm. In a school project about their village, one of these children wrote, "Lothersdale has just the right amount of people in it. Not too many, but enough to be able to make friends."
Oh, yes, I do like living here. And you know, we know every field and trees and all round. And long since we used to know everybody, but now I never get into the village. Well, I don't know them same.
So many new people have come to the village, young married people with little families. Therefore, we're going to get some new blood into the village. Things change, and I think it's quite a good change, and I'm sure the people enjoy living here. And it will still be, I'm sure, a happy village. That's how I feel about it.
Lothersdale is as happy as any British community dares now to be. And if you look across the world, that is still a very great deal of happiness. This is a place not for a holiday, but for a life.
I don't know. I've talked to people from Keighley, and as near as Colne and Nelson and Skipton, and never heard of Lothersdale. I've never heard of it. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it worries us unduly. We don't want invading.